Hello and welcome to the workshop Success at Work. My name is Fatma Tuvexiev, and I'm an employment specialist with Next Steps Employment Center, the Riverdale location. If you're currently job searching, I hope this workshop gives you useful information for when you start your next job. And if you've gotten a new position, congratulations. That's amazing news. And hopefully, this workshop will give you a really great foundation of how to start your new position in the best foot. So this workshop will go over designing job success, what that means and what that would look like, the top traits that lead to success at work, what employers are looking for. That's important to know so you can hopefully meet and exceed their expectations. The first day at your new job and within the first few weeks, and some strategies for handling conflict. Conflict is a big part of life. We can't avoid it. So it's important to have some tools in our toolbox so that when we experience it, we know what to do. As we will talk about some tips and suggestions, workplace harassment, and identifying supports. So, designing job success. When you start a new job, it's important to have a really strong foundation so that will increase your chances of passing the probationary period and doing well in the role. It's very common for most companies to have a probationary period and maybe 3 months, 6 months, maybe closer to a year. That's a good question to ask when you're starting a new job, what the probationary period is. And what that means is during that time, employers can let you go if you're not performing at their expectations. So in the beginning, you really want to impress your employer. You want to kind of be on your best behavior and try your best to do well in the new position. That includes getting along with staff and management. So being friendly, cooperative, a team player, identifying and preventing problems before they arise. So if you see a problem and it's really small, that's the best time to address it rather than waiting for it to escalate and then it becoming more of an issue. Completing your work duties in a way where you feel proud and accomplished. I know we all need to work to make money, to feed ourselves, and have accommodations for living. But hopefully, this job that you get will be more than that. It will be an opportunity where you can get some meaning from the job, where you can get value, where you can feel like you're really accomplishing something. So, all of these criteria go into making this new job a success. The top traits that lead to job success, so I'll go through each of these one by one. The first is excellent verbal and written communication skills. So it's important that you're communicating with your customers, clients, patients, as well as with staff, your colleagues, your management, any stakeholders or external contacts that you're working with. That can include answering questions clearly, providing information in a way where your tone is friendly and respectful, where you're giving additional information to help address any concerns. Your communication is easy to understand and thorough, and that you're also listening to obtain information from others. Working well in groups, very important to be a team player. So seeing if you could help out your team, taking initiative, sharing ideas and best practices so that it's not just, you thinking about your own work, but thinking about it in the context of the people around you so that it's not just you being a success, but your organization being a success as well. Flexibility. This is really important because a lot of the time in different jobs, you'll have a set of job duties and expectations of what you need to accomplish. But different situations may arise. We're living through a pandemic right now, so a lot of employees currently are being asked to be flexible in terms of how they're performing their job duties. We don't really know what situations will arise in the future, so employers, really appreciate the ability to be flexible in how you do your work, being creative and problem solving, which is the next point, thinking about ideas and thinking outside the box. And part of problem solving is that Problems will arise, whether they're big or small, in any job. That's just the nature of life. And rather than rushing off to your manager every time a problem comes up, they really want to see, can you take on that responsibility? Can you think about ways to address that problem? Whether it's coming up with various solutions, coming up with ideas of how to prevent problems in the future from occurring, and how to make sure, like following up to make sure that it was resolved fully. Time management. This is really important, not only with being punctual, returning from breaks on time, putting in the hours worked that you're expected to, but also if you have a series of multiple different job duties that you need to complete, can you manage your time accordingly? Be realistic with knowing how long a certain task will take you, prioritizing your work to make sure that you're meeting deadlines, that you're completing the work in a timely manner, so that if you are working with customers, patients, clients, that they're getting their services or products in a timely manner as well. Taking initiative. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but not just waiting for work to be assigned to you, but again, kind of looking at the big picture, looking at the work that you're completing, and seeing if there's something that you can do that will be helpful. And when we talk about taking initiative, sometimes my clients will say to me, they're thinking really big things, like that you revolutionized the whole inventory system, or that you came up with a whole new way of doing something, which is wonderful, but it could also be something quite small, seeing that you have 3 forms to complete that could be combined into one, that, taking the initiative to make that suggestion to your manager, or taking the initiative to put together a draft to show what that would look like. Sometimes these small little suggestions could have a really big impact on making your job easier, increasing the productivity, and making things smoother for everyone around you as well. And emotion management. Sometimes this is referred to as anger management, but I think emotions can include a multiple range of things. It's really useful to be able to understand your own emotions and understand your own needs. And if you're, right now we are going through unprecedented times, and if you feel that you're going through something and you require extra support, being able to acknowledge that to yourself, and then communicate that to your manager, and see what solutions you guys can both come up with. Being respectful, very important. The best way to gain respect is to give respect. So, with those around you, if you're being respectful in your tone and in your approach, then it's going to create a more positive environment, and it'll be more likely that you'll get deliver good customer service as well. What employers are looking for. The World Economic Forum completed the Future of Jobs report, which they do annually, and so it came out in January 2020 to identify the top 10 skills employers would be looking for this year. So I'm going to review that in the next slide. But I just wanted to mention anecdotally, when I've been in this field for over 10 years now, and when I speak with employers who are hiring, regardless of the industry or the type of role, everything from grocery store clerks to insurance companies to small nonprofits, what they're looking for are these top 4 things that I hear a lot: positive attitude, work ethic, dependability, and flexibility. It's important that you know how to do the duties of the job. It's important that you have the qualifications, absolutely. But when you're competing with other people to get this job, what they really want to see is the fit. And hiring someone who's going to be hardworking, have that work ethic, who they can rely on. So if I give you a task, are you dependable, and you're going to complete the task? The flexibility in order to adapt to different situations as they come up, and a positive attitude. Are you going to be open to new suggestions, to new ideas, or are you going to be saying no to everything? So that positive attitude can be really helpful in creating a positive environment for everyone. Something to keep in mind. So, according to the World Economic Forum, the top 10 skills that employers would be looking for in 2020 are as follows on the left column. And on the right, they just compare it with the top 10 from 2015. And you can see there's a lot of similarities. Some items moved in importance from over the last 5 years. But you can see complex problem solving is number one for 2020 as it was for 2015. What does that mean, complex problem solving? That word complex kind of throws a um, big question mark there, but really it just means that you're thinking critically, which is the second point. When you see a problem come up, ideally not just waiting for the problem to come up, but anticipating problems that may come up. If the problem is a bigger one, kind of breaking it up into sections, seeing the big picture and coming up with some ideas and thoughts of what could be implemented to help address that problem, prevent it from reoccurring, and really following up to ensure that it has been resolved completely. So this ability to problem solve is very useful in all occupations. Whether you're in a position where you're working independently or working in a team or with front-facing role with clients or patients or client customers, very important that you have that ability to take on some responsibility with the problem solving rather than expecting someone else to come up with solutions and tell you what to do. Critical thinking, as I mentioned, just thinking kind of beyond your day-to-day work duties and kind of thinking beyond that to see where there's opportunities for growth and improvement. Creativity. When we think of creativity, you may think about jobs where you're being artistic, or like a graphic designer, or an interior designer, a painter. But really, there's an opportunity to be creative in almost every job, whether it's how you present your information, how you're working with individuals, how you're working with a system, whether it's an IT system. So the idea to be creative is just to, again, rather than completing A, then B, then C, taking that step back, reviewing the work you're doing and thinking, is there an opportunity for me to do things a little differently to make things a little bit smoother or better? And when I say that, I don't mean just better for the employer and better for the company, but better for you as well. Maybe there is something that could be done a little bit differently that will make your work easier. So it's nice to have that opportunity to reevaluate. People management is a really useful skill, even if you're not directly managing individuals, but you're in a leadership role with your colleagues or you're mentoring new staff. So very useful. Coordinating with others, again, being a team player. Emotional intelligence, so understanding when it's appropriate to be empathetic, understanding that if somebody else is, being defensive or grumpy, maybe it just means that they need extra help or they need some support. So not taking the emotions of others as personally either, and really being critical about that as well. Judgment and decision making, that goes in line with what I mentioned earlier with problem solving. Service orientation, so thinking of opportunities to coordinate and work with other services that are available to provide more options. Negotiating, there's a lot of useful things that go into negotiating, having thorough knowledge of the product or the issue at hand, being able to communicate clearly, being able to problem solve, and being firm but in a tactful way. And cognitive flexibility. If you're used to doing things a certain way, are you open-minded to considering doing it in a different way? Especially when the situation's changed so much with COVID, do you have that cognitive flexibility to adapt to a new technology or to a new way of doing something? So these are what employers are looking for, and it's useful just to think about that and have that in your mind when you're job searching or also when you start in a new role so that you can help meet the expectations of others. So the first day of work, you got a new job. Yay, congratulations. You want to make sure that your first day, you're building that really strong foundation to increase the chances of success moving forward. So you want to plan that first day. If you are going into your workplace, making sure that you arrive early, not just on time, but early. With traffic is very different these days. You may not know what it's going to be like, and you really don't want to be late and set that negative tone when you're so new. So be early, 15 minutes would be great. Dress for success. Definitely want to look your best. When I hear feedback from employers, the things that they usually are unimpressed with is when your clothes are loose fitting or wrinkled or look like they're stained. Clothing that makes it look like you didn't put that effort into it, that you don't care what they think. So dressing for success is just showing that you are putting your best self forward. Avoid bringing any personal items with you. You don't know what the situation is, if you're going to have a desk or a locker or how much space you'll have. So hold off on bringing anything with you until you have been there for a little while and you're more familiar. Definitely bring a small notepad and pen so you can take notes. You're going to get a lot of information, a lot of people. So it's useful to write it down so you're not too overwhelmed and don't forget everything. If you don't know, ask. It's okay that you don't know things. You're new. Even if you've done this type of job before, even if you have a lot of experience, every organization is different and do things slightly differently. So, ask questions, listen to different people, and just take it all in. Do more listening than talking. You have a lot to offer in this role. You have your experience, your knowledge. That's great. But I do suggest holding off on making your suggestions until you've had a chance to observe to see how things are being done here. And that way you can have an idea of how your suggestions and experience can fit. And definitely smile and be friendly with everyone you meet. When you're starting off in a new job, it's a lot. It can be overwhelming. It can be a little anxiety inducing because you're starting a new job and we're, again, being mindful that we are currently going through a pandemic. Sometimes our neutral face can make us seem like we're unhappy or upset. So, just to make sure other people don't misinterpret our facial expressions, really being mindful of smiling, greeting everyone, and that way you're setting yourself up on a chance to be more successful. Within the first few weeks, you should know when your lunch and break times are. So, again, ask if you don't know. Try not to be late or miss any days, especially during the probationary period. If you have to, communicate that with your manager and really just try to be mindful that during the probationary period, they are looking at everything, including your attendance. So this could be a factor in, their opinion of you as an employee. Read through all company material that's provided to you, even if you feel like it's the same as your last job. Again, every employer is a little bit different, so it's really good to know their expectations and the rules. Avoid participating in gossip. Sometimes your colleagues will gossip with you. If that happens, try to politely remove yourself from the conversation. If you don't really have a choice, just listen, but don't engage or add anything to that gossip. And definitely don't repeat it to anybody else. This is really a, a really touchy area because it's an easy way to unintentionally get into conflict with your colleagues. And everybody who's sharing information with you, they have their own history and their own frame of reference. So take what they say to you with a grain of salt. Be friendly with everyone. You never know who is going to be that really helpful colleague who's going to be able to share information to help you succeed in your role. Try to stay away from the problem employees. And if you're making mistakes, that's okay. You're human. Ask for help. The worst thing would be to just allow those mistakes to continue and build, and then that could potentially be a cause for dismissal. But rather, in the beginning, you're new, you're learning. This is the time to ask your questions and ask for help or assistance, and they may be able to show you different strategies that will help you improve. Conflict at work. Conflict will take many different forms. It could be a small disagreement, again, with the client, patient, customer you're working with a colleague, with a supervisor. I do believe the majority of conflict is caused by miscommunication or misunderstandings, which is why it's really important to address things when they're smaller rather than to wait for them to escalate and grow bigger. So definitely don't ignore or retaliate. If you feel offended by how someone reacted to you, what we don't want to do is to react the same way back to them, because then we're just creating a vicious cycle that's not going to, move towards resolving. Instead, ideally, you would address it directly with the individual. But if in doubt, talk to your supervisor for assistance. And again, this could be any manner of things. It could just be someone not, thinking that taking offense by the work that you did, thinking that you thought you were better than them. Sometimes even just complimenting the individual can disarm them and kind of calm them down. So saying, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And I learned a lot from you. Is there anything I can do to help you out as well? And then that could help resolve a situation. For more serious conflicts, if you experience harassment, it's very important that you don't ignore this. Harassment is engaging in a course of comment or conduct that is known or ought reasonably to be known to be unwelcome. So this includes gestures, comments, contact, looks, behavior, threats, abusive intimidation or assault, sexual solicitation that is unwelcome. It can also include jokes, people meaning something in good jest, but it can be quite harmful, displays of offensive visual or audio materials, racial, ethnic, sexist slurs, looks, or stereotyping, and unnecessary physical contact, such as touching, patting, or pinching, are various forms of harassment. So sometimes you may feel like you're experiencing harassment, and maybe the person who's being the harasser doesn't realize what they're doing is inappropriate. So perhaps they're touching you on the shoulder, but in their culture, that's something that's normal. Or perhaps they said a joke and they didn't realize that it was inappropriate. Not at all to excuse that behavior, but sometimes by speaking with them and explaining that, when you touch my shoulder, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I would really appreciate it if you didn't do that. When you make a joke about this cultural group, I don't appreciate that. Could you please not make that joke again? That could go a long way, because it's sometimes just pointing out what happened, politely addressing it, describing the situation, and letting them know how you feel. So rather than saying, you made a joke that was really racist, that can lead to them feeling offended and you're now labeling them. But instead, if you say, describe what happened, and you made this joke about this thing, and I felt uncomfortable, you're putting it back on you and how you're feeling. That's an I statement. So it's harder for them to disagree with your feelings. So that way it can be a more productive conversation. Make sure you tell them to stop, ask them to stop, and give them a chance to comply. But the first point here, document what happened. Really important that if anything ever happens that makes you feel uncomfortable and qualifies as harassment, write it down, the date that it happened, if there were any witnesses, what was said, what happened. And hopefully it will never happen again. But if it does, and you want to provide this to management, they're going to ask you for documentation. So better just to write it all down when it's fresh in your mind. And if the behavior persists, you would contact your supervisor or manager. If the behavior is more serious in nature and you don't feel comfortable talking to the person who did it, then you can go straight to your manager or supervisor. And if the problem persists, you do have the option of contacting the Ontario Human Rights Commission. But please do not ignore it. You have rights, and it is not okay for you to experience harassment at work. So these are some of my suggestions for how to deal with it. Identifying support. So when you're starting a new job, It's a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, especially right now during COVID. So identify supports ahead of time, friends and family you can speak with, a professional mentor inside or outside your organization, coworkers. You can ask your employment advisor from Next Steps Employment Center. Even though you found a job, we're still here. We can still answer employment related questions and give you resources and referrals. And there's some resources online. If you go to the website for excuse me, Canadian Mental Health Association, CMHA, you can Google City of Toronto or Toronto Public Health mental health resources, or 211 Toronto. The website, 211toronto.ca, or they have a toll-free phone number you can call, are a really great resource to connect you with free services in the Toronto area that can be helpful in terms of mental health or any sort of emotional support that you might be looking for. So I wanted to thank you for participating in this workshop. I hope this information was useful to you. If you have any questions about any of the content, please feel free to email me. My email's on the page here. And if you're looking for work right now, please contact Next Steps Employment Center. We are so happy to help you. We have experienced staff at 7 of our locations, which are in Mississauga, Vaughan, Toronto, North York, and Scarborough. On the page here, we have our website, which you can go to for the contact information. Right now, you can contact us by phone or email, and we will get back to you right away and see how we can help you with your job search. So good luck, and I wish you the best of luck in finding a job. And if you found one, amazing. Best of luck in starting your new role. Thank you.